Hello, college football fans. Welcome to episode 228 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined in person by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, Husker fans and college football fans. It's always good to be together, Alex, here in the beauty of northern Michigan to enjoy a podcast together.
That's right. We're recording this on August 10th, and I would happen to be in town here in Michigan visiting Dad, so we decided to do some podcasts together. This particular episode is going to be our Nebraska-focused discussion. 227 was our national discussion. So we'll be talking about what's been going on with the football team since our last podcast in June, how fall camp has been going so far, and what kind of some of our expectations and goals are for the team for this upcoming 2026 season.
2026. That's hard to say.
It was. So, and for those who may be listening to this podcast for the first time, we're a father-son duo here to talk about college football by college football fans for college football fans. And today we'll be talking about our favorite team, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, as we stick to our tradition and open up a cold beverage.
There we go.
I got myself a Labatt Blue Light here myself.
And I have a Yingling Light here, but I kind of did it prematurely and opened it before, so yours is the only tap that's going to be heard by our listeners.
Dad got a little excited. What can you say? But cheers.
Cheers. Here we go. Boy, that sounded good.
So just a few cool bits of news that have happened for past members of the Husker organization that we wanted to highlight here at the start of the podcast. One is Tom Osborne, the legendary head coach of Nebraska, was officially inducted into the Nebraska State Hall of Fame. So he's already in the University Hall of Fame, but now he's in the State Hall of Fame as well, the first living member to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Right.
And I think that's not too surprising given how beloved he is across the state.
Exactly. And they, realistically, why not give him that honor while he's still alive?
Yep, I agree. So that was pretty cool. And we also had Roger Craig, who's a former Husker who went on to have a very successful career in the NFL with the San Francisco 49ers. Recently had his ceremony for his induction into the NFL Pro Hall of Fame. And there were some cool videos about his time at Nebraska and what he did in the pros and his unique running style where he, ran with very high knees and forward motion.
That's right. It had incredible balance as a result, and just was. I was telling Alex, he was a guy that I would have hated to have to tackle, because with that kind of leg action going on, man, you just did not want to tackle him from the front. You wanted to tackle him from the side,
right?
Because otherwise you were going to get a face full of knee pad. But the other thing is that he is kind of credited with redefining the running back position in the NFL. His numbers and stats and that sort of stuff didn't necessarily rise to the level of a typical NFL Hall of Fame running back, and that's why it took so many years for him to be inducted, right? He was passed over many, many times and was finally brought in this year, and everybody is very happy about that and thinks he's very deserving because of what he did to the position. He was a guy who the first player to have 1,000+ yards rushing and 1,000+ yards receiving in the same year.
Right.
And I think he did it twice in his career. And there were years that he had 1,600 yards rushing. So he was a very much a every down kind of back, but yet he would regularly get 90 or even 100 catches in a season.
Yeah.
Within Bill Walsh's system.
I do think it was funny in one of the videos you sent me about that. They were saying he caught only 4 passes his senior year at Nebraska.
Yeah.
And they were like, can this guy, catch the ball? But Bill Walsh saw in the pros that he could do it.
Right.
And frankly, maybe a bit of a mistake on the part of Tom, that he didn't see that this was a possibility
right.
for his offense.
Right.
A weapon he could have used.
Yep, that's true. Different offense, different philosophy, that sort of thing. And,
right.
Yeah, Bill Walsh probably didn't know that when he drafted Roger, but he counted on him being able to develop it if he didn't have it.
Yeah, so that was cool. And then another former Husker, Damon Benning, has officially joined the staff as the Director of Player Development, so one of the support roles at the university.
Right. And now Damon has been, he's been a guy who has had multiple hats in his current employment situation he's a radio personality that's on the radio, pretty much, or, what do I want to call it?
Color commentator.
YouTube, and he's the color commentator for the University of Nebraska football broadcasts. And I'm going to guess that he may not do that beyond this year. They may have him do it this year just as a transition because it's so late in the year, right, that he's taking this job. I don't know, but we'll see. And so it'll be interesting to see if there's a change in the booth there at Nebraska with Damon in his new role.
Right. And then our last podcast was back on June 14th. So we have had some new additions to our 2027 class since then, some new commits that are worth discussing. Just going to go over those here. They include a 3-star safety named Brennan Drummond, a 3-star inner offensive lineman Barrett Kittrell, 4-star cornerback Jalen Hill, and the one that got the most attention was 4-star wide receiver Khalil Taylor. Actually, on that last podcast, you had mentioned how we hadn't gotten maybe as many big name receivers, kind of following Trey Taylor to that 2027 class as you might expect. And then sure enough, then there in July, we got a pretty big name.
Right. And he was a guy that many people thought was going to go to another school, to Penn State. So him choosing the Huskers was a big deal.
Yeah.
We've got a pretty good receiver room right now. So that's just going to make that better. So I'm excited about that.
Did you have any strong thoughts on the other 3 guys that I mentioned there?
Well, they're actually, you said you described a couple of them as 3 stars, but really when you look at their film and stuff, I'm very comfortable with what I see, and their huddle film, because they look the part of a football player. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't question, this guy's like a man playing against little boys, it looks like, because he's playing in some small class or whatever, and so he's just outstripping the athleticism of everyone around him. A guy like that may not be a very good football player. Right. He's just a better athlete than everybody he's playing against. Does that make sense? Right. Where I sensed real skill and especially the offensive lineman,
Barrett.
Yeah, he Cottrell. Yeah, he's a guy that a lot of people wanted. And has the chance to be a real contributor.
Mm-hmm. That would be cool. And then another little surprise that we got was that we got a transfer in for the 2026 class, which is Tiki Hayes, a running back that was at Penn State, who's transferred in. He's a former 3-star player recruited out of high school. So obviously he wasn't getting the playing time he wanted at Penn State, decided to come here to Nebraska. And we've got, a good number of running backs, but no star back now that Emmett has graduated. Emmett Johnson has left the team. So, that's going to be a competitive room that I think a lot of people are going to be watching in these first few games of the year.
Absolutely. And actually, you describe him as a 3-star coming out of high school. I think there were some recruiting services that had him ranked higher and would have defined him as a 4-star. Yeah, I kind of like his running style. He's a little smallish. Not small. I'm using it's the wrong word.
Lean.
He's lean. And I think, but he's got a frame that he could add some weight, and I kind of like his running style in watching him. So I think there's a chance that if he gets acclimated and stays healthy during this preseason camp, that there's going to come a point in the not too distant into the season where we're going to be able to use him, right? Especially now that it's 5 for 5, he ain't redshirting him, so. let's use the guy, right? And he was recruited by Ohio State, Penn State. This is a guy that was sought after.
Yeah, definitely.
So that can't hurt.
Yep. And as we discussed on our previous podcast, episode 227, which was our national podcast, we have this new injunction in place from the Colorado judge basically saying that players from the 2025 class who graduated last year as seniors, as long as they haven't gone to the NFL or didn't transfer or anything like that, have the opportunity to come back to their previous school for a fifth year of eligibility because of the NCAA's new rules on the 5-for-5. Now I don't believe we have any confirmations of anybody doing that with Nebraska yet.
Yeah.
And we've already are over our 105 roster limit currently.
Right.
But if any news does come on that front, obviously we will talk about it if that injunction stays in effect and all that stuff.
Right. And, it'll be interesting to see if that injunction survives the challenges because the NCAA is pushing back.
Yes, definitely. Now, obviously, we've also had Big Ten Media Days have come and gone, and Matt Rule was there along with some players, talking to the media. We've had fall camp now kick off here for the past week. So we're starting to get into the groove of prepping for the season properly. And some of the comments that have been made, are about how we have an older team this year, right? We've generally been pretty young under Matt Rule. He's brought a lot of those guys. But now we have a good majority of the team that are more on the junior, senior end of the scale. So we have some good experience, which is good to have. And both Troy Dannon, the athletic director, and Matt Rule have said in comments that they believe that this is the most talented, best roster that Matt Rule has had in his 4 years so far.
Right. Well, he's completed 3 years. This is the beginning of his fourth season.
Yes.
And I would tend to agree that talent-wise, it's still hard. It's to be determined what our new quarterback's going to be, right?
Calandria.
Calandria. I mean, I know that there's a lot of film out there and stuff, but I am gonna reserve my opinion until I see him play against some Big Ten competition. So even these first 3 games that we're going to play, even if he lights it up, looks really good, I'm not ready to say, yep, he's a big upgrade over Dylan. I believe he's going to be. Don't get me wrong, but it's kind of a wait and see, right? So I don't know about the quarterback room, but offensive line, wide receivers, are better, I think, than they have been in previous years. We've got some young talent at tight end that I think could emerge, and with the quarterback that we now have, or quarterbacks, because it's multiple, that have this greater mobility, a lot of times the tight end is the safety net, right, in a lot of route combinations. And so when things break down because he's scrambling back there and trying to extend the play, I think the tight ends have the chance to be the beneficiary of that, right? In terms of more catches and more impact on the team. So I feel good about a lot of the offensive components. I absolutely strongly disagree about the interior defensive line, and I think that is a huge hole. Okay, I think defensive ends, again, it would appear that we have bodies and depth that of guys that look the part and may very well become great players for us in the next couple of years, but not very many of them have proven it.
Right.
And so I'm less optimistic about our defense because really I think we've got some players in the secondary that have demonstrated some skill, and I think we're going to end up with a pretty darn good secondary. Linebackers totally revamped in a lot of ways, and I'm not sure what to think of that. And we're running a 4-2-5. That's the defensive scheme we're running. So frankly, there's not as many linebackers in play. So that means we better have 4 or 5 guys that we can run through rotation so that they're all playing fresh all the time and kicking butt. But I have to see that, right? So they're more talented than they've ever been. I think people who say that are focusing too much on some of the offensive position rooms and not looking at the whole team.
Okay, that's fair. It's fair. Another thing that Matt Rule has said is that he was complimenting the strength and conditioning that the players have been doing in the offseason, said that the team as a whole has added 677 lean pounds of muscle and lost 188 pounds of fat.
Mm-hmm.
So he's saying that, we did a better job this year maybe than in the past, that conditioning aspect, we're coming in leaner and meaner, in that sort of way.
Right.
So once again, sounds great, but we need to see the proof in the pudding.
Right. And frankly, in the Big Ten, when it comes down to November, okay,
right,
you need mass, okay, and so sometimes being leaner isn't necessarily better in certain positions, right?
Right.
So, I mean, obviously, I think every position benefits from having a more lean and powerful frame, even linemen.
Right.
However, there are going to come times when, you just need to have a body that can get in the way of the other team's body, right? And that tends to happen late in the season when the weather's cold and, everybody's playing hurt, right? They've all got bumps and bruises, all that sort of stuff. So, I need the fat bellies to be fat bellies a little bit. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, at the end of the day, what I'm hoping, and this is what's been presented to us, is that this new defensive coordinator,
Rob Arick,
is simplifying the defensive information and decision making so that these guys can play more naturally and more athletically. Last year, at times, especially in the second half of the season, looked incredibly unathletic, right? And I think part of it was the guys, the longer the season went on, I think they lost their confidence in what they were doing. And that might be part of the reason for the transition at defensive coordinator. The guy who was there last year,
John Butler,
may have brought too much NFL concept into the fold, and these guys were thinking too much.
Right. Yeah, it does seem that way. Speaking of Rob Arick, Matt Rule was asked kind of a question about the adjustment, from John Butler to Rob Arick, changing the scheme, like you say, to this 4-2-5 instead of the 3-3-5 that we were doing before.
Right.
But Matt kind of downplayed that a bit, saying there's been no adjustment. There's a change, but there's really no adjustment because we did so much of that. There were games last year where we were in 4 down 60 to 70% of the time. That was just the bodies that we had developed, and I think good coaches say to themselves, what's the best scheme fit for the players we have? The players have picked it up and run with it, talking about Arick's new scheme.
Right. And I think that's good because, again, but you also can't be so simple that other teams are able to take advantage of your simplicity. Okay, they know you don't have enough different things they can figure out because every offensive scheme is designed to put you in a conflicting situation. Right. Where if I address this or attack this, then you're going to do that. Right? Mm-hmm. And at some point, you then have to have some defensive sophistication that disguises or accommodates that, if that makes sense.
Right.
So you can't be too simple. And I get it. Arick isn't. They're like, oh no, you're there's not a bunch of defensive concepts here. Yeah, there are. He's going to introduce some more as the season goes on. After the ones that he's already introduced are second nature. Right. I need to get you guys playing this stuff like like the back of your hand.
Right.
And then you take that next step.
You don't think about it.
Right.
Yep. Well, and this one article I was reading, it was just a good reminder, this is nothing new, but just of how good our secondary was last year. It was saying in 2025, the Huskers were third in the nation with only 154 yards passing allowed per game. On top of that, Nebraska was the second in the nation with the longest pass allowed being only 50 yards. The best team in that category was none other than RX San Diego State. So just a reminder that, San Diego State, where RX was before, also had great secondary.
Right.
And like you say, the strength of our players and our talent that's proven is kind of in that area. So we can feel pretty confident that we should see continued success there.
Right.
The real question point is the defensive line, like you said, and stopping the run.
Well, stopping the run. Our ability to stop the run and to run the football when you expect people to run the football, right? When it's 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 2, can we stop them from getting a first down? 3rd and 4.
Right.
Or can we get 3 or 4 yards when it's 3rd and 4 and we choose to line up and smash it?
And you are feeling better about our offensive line with the changes to the coaching staff, the what the players have been doing, bulking up, etc.
Right. And the addition of the players. I mean, our
transfers.
Our offensive line will probably average 320 pounds. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to be a Big Ten sized group, right?
Right.
And we have a little bit of depth as well. We have some young guys, unproven, but have come in highly regarded, or have been described by the coaches as having made significant progress. Right. So we're not in a situation where we have to have these guys all stay healthy or we're toast. Now I say that with my fingers crossed, and specifically left tackle. Right, our left tackle cannot get hurt, or we're going to be where we've been for the last 5 or 7 years, where there's been a turnstile at your left tackle position, which is protecting your blind side.
Yes, especially important. And then we also got some commentary from Dana Holgerson, our offensive coordinator, who's returning from last year, and he's been expressing a lot of positivity about what he's seeing offensively. Was saying that the wide receiver speed is definitely markedly better than it was last year. Talked about Janiron Bonner, the fact that he is playing on the team. He was injured very early in the season last year, basically didn't get to play at all. So having him, presuming he stays healthy, as a difference maker on the field will be a nice asset that we didn't have before. However, he did express some disappointment in the tight ends, specifically with their progress in June and July, in those summer months when the coaches can't have contact with them.
Have less contact, yeah. And I don't know precisely what he meant by that statement. So, we're guessing. It's not like he spelled out, this is why I was disappointed with them. He just kind of off the cuff said, yeah, I was a little disappointed with them in July, but they've responded.
Yeah,
and which means they've reacted and come up to the standard that he was hoping. But it's irritating to me. I should never, ever hear that, ever. If Matt Rule is doing his job the way he wants to do it and the way he portrays himself, right? We're going to be the hardest working, blah blah blah. Okay, you can't have your offensive coordinator making a remark like that. In fact, I'm almost certain Matt Rule probably has had a conversation with Dana about that comment, because he was asked about that in his press conference, and he's like, I have no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I have a feeling those two guys have had some words about, why did you say that? And you're free to say what you want to say, but you need to back it up. There's this vagueness thing, in the state of Nebraska, where we pick on every word said and blow it up. You just can't make these, kind of obscure references and statements, especially when it has to do with the things that are prideful for Nebraska, which is, if guys aren't working hard, if they're not working together, like you had to shout at them because they weren't giving 100% effort, or they weren't working together as a team, that sort of stuff. Those are huge red flags for any Nebraska fan. It's going to cause them to freak out. And the reality is that's true on every team. Even our championship teams had that. I guarantee it, okay?
Right.
But the difference is when those things happened in the past, a story I will restate, and I don't know whether it's just urban legend or truth. I have heard it enough and know the parties involved enough that I believe it to be true, that there was a particular occasion when Christian Peter, he is the older brother of Jason, both great defensive tackles for us and just intensely competitive men, saw an underclassman who he believed was not putting in 100% effort.
Right.
And Christian, who is a 300-pound guy, like literally ran all the way across the field and tackled the guy. Okay, just nailed him. Okay,
right.
and basically got in his face and said, "You're not giving enough effort." I'm sure expletive,
right.
and you better get your stuff going in the right direction. And that's the kind of mentality and self-management that, as a team, I haven't heard enough about. Right, and part of that is we don't see things as much as we used to. We meaning we got
Nebraska
a lot more
faithful.
fans and the media. They got a lot more time with the team. Nowadays, they don't get to see as much of practice. They don't get to see the fights that break out between the offensive linemen and defensive linemen. They don't get to see when things aren't cherry and perfect.
Back
right?
then, not everybody had a phone in their pocket to record it and spread it across the whole world.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's why they can't do it, right?
Right.
But the fact is, that to me, that those sparks, that's important to me, sensing, okay, these guys actually want to win. I need to be hearing about some stories like that, even if they're held under wraps because of the video thing and all that. So we'll see.
Right. Well, of course, one thing we do know for certain is that Tommy Frazier was not particularly loved by all of his teammates.
Absolutely not.
Because he was kind of an asshole to them.
Right.
Because he demanded excellence from them, and he upheld that excellence for himself, that same standard.
Exactly. And I think you need enough players that have that mentality. If everybody has that mentality and they act that way, they act out on it, then you probably have some team chemistry problems, right?
Right.
Because you're going to have a bunch of people mad at each other.
Like the old Miami Hurricanes, or just getting into fights all the time or whatever.
Right. So there's a balance there, and that's where you talk about leadership and having a leadership group that understands and self-regulates their team, right? So Matt Rule doesn't have to do it. Matt's coaches don't have to do it. The team kind of does it themselves.
Right.
That's what you look forward to. And we're a more mature team now.
Yep.
So that
Senior
should
leadership.
start to show up.
Right.
And if that combined with the I know what I'm doing now, everything is like the back of my hand because my defense is simpler, maybe we're going to see a defense that flies to the football and is physical in a way that it was, in Rule's first year when he had basically two future NFL defensive tackles.
Garrett Nelson.
And he had Tony White calling a defense. We were aggressive and we flew to the ball, right?
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that defense, right? We weren't great. It was a talent deficiency, but the effort was there.
Right.
And I loved it, right? And we could stop the run. I think back then it was maybe the pass that we couldn't do so well against.
That's true.
Anyway, that's bottom line. I want to see us play with a physicality and a passion and an aggressiveness that demonstrates our team's real athleticism.
Well, here's a spontaneous question for you I just thought of.
Okay.
Because I think you do raise a good point that we are older this year, and so you expect that senior leadership. We've talked about that in the past, how important it is for the older players to pass down that level of expectation and effort to the younger players, because if the seniors are kind of slacking off, the freshmen definitely are.
Right.
But in terms of leadership, we have Anthony Calandria, our new quarterback, who's a senior.
Yeah. Your quarterback has to be a natural leader. He has to do it.
Right. And everything we've heard is that Anthony is very jovial and, does these cool little custom handshakes with the members of his team, like at San Diego State and stuff like that.
Right.
I'm sure he's going to be a good leader, but he is a transfer coming into the program this year versus, guys who have been with the program for 4 years now or 5. So if it's not Anthony, let's say it's not Anthony, who would you say is like the senior leader on the team who you think would kind of command the respect in the locker room to kind of be the big dog?
Right. Again, you need them on both sides of the ball, right? And our running back room is
right, because you had Emmett
quite young
before.
Yeah, so they're not going to probably have a big role in the leadership of the team. And but the wide receiver group has some guys that have been around. Barney and some of those guys. They're going to have to be leaders among that group, right? But again, wide receivers are kind of their own separate group, right? Like they're out there wide. They're not in the mix with the physicality as much, and so I need leadership there, but that can't be my main leader. So I really think Calandria and or whoever else is the quarterback, including TJ. TJ's going to have to just be amazing because he's not likely to be the starter unless AC gets hurt,
right?
And so he needs to be a guy that if there is contention or issues of performance, he's got to be the guy that keeps everybody together.
And
I think TJ's huge.
DJ does have a little bit more gravitas behind him because he was the starting quarterback in the second half of last year.
Right. Well, and he's and from all I can sense, he's a guy that has never shied away from the competition. He understands the concept and is willing to fight for his role in his minutes, right?
Right.
And he's not, thumbs down in his soup because he didn't get the starting job, right?
Right.
So I really think he's going to be super important to our leadership in the locker room.
Right.
Second, I think one of the offensive linemen. Now, our center is, preseason getting some accolades, that sort of stuff. He was one of the leaders that went to the media days.
Media days, right.
And so I got to put it on him, right? But the left tackle that came over from Alabama, whose name is Pritchett.
Okay.
He's the guy that I believe is the other key offensive leader. And then finally, Lindenmeyer, the tight end. Okay, so I would say one of those offensive linemen, Lindenmeyer, okay?
Right.
And then the quarterback all have to have a critical role. And it may be TJ as much as AC.
Right.
Okay? So those are my offensive leaders.
Right.
And then on defense, it's going to be Andrew Marshall, who is a defensive back and is one of the seniors. He was also at the media days.
Right.
I think he's going to be important. And then the other guy that wasn't at media days and is not a long-time player for us is the kid that came over, Chambliss, a linebacker who came over from San Diego State.
Mm-hmm.
He is super important to leadership of that back end, the linebackers and DBs. And then along the defensive line, I actually think it's going to be Cam Linhart and or Nowarney, the transfer from Missouri. Mm-hmm. Because those two guys, especially Nowarney, are really talented, and hyper talented, but haven't shown up on the field yet, right?
Right.
They need to be that guy
yeah.
and show leadership.
That is interesting in this just little impromptu discussion that we're having. You've mentioned several guys who are transfers into the program this year because they've had success elsewhere, mm-hmm. and we expect them to perform well here.
Right.
In this kind of new world of free agent, situation that we have in college football, do you think it's maybe, compared to the past, it's maybe less so about the years that you've stuck out with the program and more so just, have you proven that, you're really good at your job, so you command that respect, and that you have some inherent leadership qualities just as a person?
Okay. I'm going to say two things about that. The first one is, it depends on if your team was being successful. If you have a successful culture and program that's winning a lot of games, winning maybe Big Ten or conference championships and that sort of stuff, then the guys that are added to your team come in as kind of additions.
Right.
When you're trying to rebuild or create,
New.
a new direction, a new momentum, I think those transfer pieces probably come in and have a more important role. So I think it depends on the situation you're coming into. But I do believe that the what would I say? The transfers, absolutely. Kids today are so flexible, right? Years ago, I would have said it would have been hard for transfers to come in and be immediately embraced. You had to earn it. Like, if you listen to our championship years, man, if somebody came from when Scott Frost arrived after having transferred from Stanford, he was treated like crap.
Right.
Okay? And that's the way it was. I mean, that wasn't unique to Scott, although it was a little bit because Scott was cocky. But and so he needed to be brought down a couple rungs, right?
Right.
But by and large, if you came into that program at that time when they were one of the best in the nation, year in, year out, man, you had to toe the line.
Right.
This is our team. You're going to do what we say.
It's our rules.
Right. Where right now, I think the mentality of kids today is embrace the new guys. Hey, you're bringing talent in. You guys are going to make us better. We're going to win more games because of you. Boom. Immediately embrace them. Right? And that is a huge change in how kids behave today versus the way they used to behave.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that was a cool little conversation there, and we'll see, who ends up being the team captains and where that all plays out this season.
Right.
We did want to mention real quick players that are not currently practicing in fall camp, the kind of injuries that were sustained, before fall camp started. So just a few players to mention. Jacob Bauer, a junior linebacker. Jace Reynolds, freshman linebacker. Rex Waterman, freshman offensive line. Ashton Murphy, sophomore offensive lineman. And Larry Miles, freshman wide receiver.
Okay, so you hate to see a bunch of guys from the same position group showing up this early in camp on that injured list, because that begins to immediately affect depth and then the reps that all the other guys have to do to keep things going, right? So then all of a sudden you're overworking or giving too many reps maybe to some guys because we already have two offensive linemen that are out. Now, the reality is this: we're talking about a freshman and a sophomore offensive line, and his is a somewhat short-term injury.
It says. Yeah.
But and Jacob Bauer, I think he's the kid that got hurt during the spring game with an ACL, so he's out probably for the season, right? I doubt that we'll see a lot of him, and I don't know that he was necessarily going to be a huge contributor to our top two units. I could be wrong on that. So right now, Larry Miles, there were people that were bragging him up, but that probably puts him behind the eight ball, and I think they said he was going to be out for a good bit of time. So that's disappointing. Mm-hmm. I just want that list to not include critical top 44 type players, and because if a bunch of those guys start dropping off, you begin to question that strength and conditioning aspect.
Yeah, did it really work as well as Matt Rule said?
Every coach says their strength and conditioning was fabulous over the offseason. I've never, ever, ever heard coaches say, we're disappointed that we didn't quite get done what we wanted to get done. There's a couple of coaches that probably would have been willing to say that, like maybe a Bo Pelini. I mean, I think he would say something blunt like that.
Say it straight.
Yeah, but I don't know that there's a lot.
Right. Yep. So yeah, well, obviously we hope that we stay mostly injury-free here in fall camp, but also, we want the team to practice hard when they do scrimmage and things like that as well. And in terms of what we're kind of expecting for this season, we will give on our preview episode later in August, we'll preview the first game against Ohio State, which is my alma mater. So that's kind of a fun,
exciting.
It'll be a fun game to talk about. And we'll give our official predictions for how many games we think we're going to win, and kind of go over the season in a little more detail on that podcast. But just generally talking about kind of goals for the fall camp and goals for the season overall. I know in our other conversations, Dad, you've said that the most important goal for the season is just to not have the wheels fall off, meet our minimum expectations and keep the 2027 recruiting class that's developed around Trey Taylor intact, because that is our future. And if we, have 4 wins all of a sudden this year and we're crap, that class is going to fall apart, and we can't afford that.
That's right. That's like the ultimate disaster, right? Not only do we have a bad year this year that causes us to lose even more momentum, because we have to acknowledge the way last season ended with those losses at the end of the season, and just getting annihilated by Iowa and Utah in the bowl game, does not portray progress.
Positive momentum.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's important that we get to that 7-win total in my mind. And anything above that, I obviously would be thrilled with, and would suggest that we're maybe beating somebody that we weren't supposed to, or we're beating everyone that we were supposed to, which we have not done in a long time, right? We've always lost to a team or two that, frankly, looking at it from the talent and resource perspective, we should not have lost to. So those are kind of the key milestones for me. And it's not, it's a very tough schedule, but that doesn't mean we can just concede the year.
Right.
I believe Trey Taylor is deeply committed to the University of Nebraska. Mm-hmm. I don't want to test that theory. So
well, because you made the point that Dylan Raiola moved his whole family out to Georgia, right? Or wherever it was, and then when he committed to them,
and then ended up swapping to Nebraska the last week of the recruiting season.
Yep. So yeah, you never know what's going to happen there,
right?
But in terms of the fall camp, I'm looking forward to hearing more about the running back battle. As we mentioned, we've got a lot of good talent there. We've got people who've shown flashes, like in the spring game, and the bowl game last year. Some kind of interesting news on that. I'm obviously interested in the quarterback battle, how Calandria's doing, how TJ's doing, and then also defensive line, because as you say, that is the major concern. So any positive news we hear out of that, I'm hoping to take further.
I don't think, in my best case scenarios, I don't think we're going to be great in the interior defensive line. But in my best case scenarios, we do become difference makers at defensive end, because I think we have that level of talent now in the program. And so if they get coached into the right direction, and the scheme takes advantage of their skill and talent,
right?
These are some specimens, man, and we have got to get some production out of them. And if we can do that, then maybe being kind of neutral in the area of defensive tackle can be mitigated. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so and that will make our secondary, which I believe will be a strength, even stronger. Because it'll shorten that clock for opposing quarterbacks. And then, so I'm going to be very interested in the entire defensive line's play, not just the interior, but how do those defensive ends flash, right? And as productive players. Then on offense, I'm particularly interested. I think it's going to be running back by committee no matter what. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be good there, not great. And it's all going to be dictated by our offensive line. And all we've heard is all this raves about the new coaches and the performance of this offensive line.
The transfers.
But honestly, when I think back to the spring game, it was almost, I was unable to evaluate the offensive line because I felt like our defensive line was so bad that, that doesn't tell me anything. And now we're going to play 3 non-conference games against teams that, frankly, all of them we should be able to beat and beat soundly.
Yeah.
So that means I want to see us dominate. What's going to frustrate me is if we're either making mistakes in assignment or jumping off sides, which Pritchett had a propensity to early last season. He was terrible, and he had like at least one procedure penalty every game, sometimes two, and he eventually got benched for a while because of it. It was just horrible. You can't have that, right? You're a mature group. You guys have got to do your shit, right? So let's see that, as the practices proceed, that we're hearing from the coaches that, hey, we're doing a good job of not having too many penalties during practice, because they have referees at practice.
Right.
I don't want to hear that we're having too many false starts during our scrimmages and stuff like that. And I think if we have that, then the quarterback thing will kind of take care of itself a little bit if those guys are getting protected. And the final thing is wide receivers, they need to create separation. I need those guys to get open, okay? Because I feel like last year there were times when our wide receivers didn't ever get open.
Right.
Or Dylan was blind.
Right.
Right.
Well,
and I don't know which one of those. And I'm being exaggerative, but you understand what I'm saying. Either Dylan was really struggling to see the field, which was his strength. It's been talked about since he was in high school, or our wide receivers simply were not getting separation that allowed him to throw the football. And
right.
if that's true, then I need that to go away.
Right.
And maybe having a more athletic quarterback who can buy extra time is going to do that. But that requires those wide receivers to understand, I got to break off my pattern because my guy's now scrambling and I got to be coming back
towards
to the ball.
Him.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and I think that was probably a little of column A, a little of column B, because I do remember certain times where, Dylan was under pressure and you would see in the replay that he did have somebody open, but he just didn't see him, or missed him on his progressions or what have you.
Exactly.
So there was definitely some of that, but I also think there were other times I can remember where, it looked like our wide receiver wasn't running full tilt, right? He wasn't giving 100%.
Right.
So I'm hoping to see improvement in both of those areas for this season.
I agree, and I think that's going to be critical to the consistency of our offense.
Yes.
And that leads us to another message, which is that consistency in the red zone, both defensively and offensively. We've heard the stats. We might have talked about them a little bit on some previous podcasts about just the ridiculously poor performance inside the red zone of our offense and our defense.
Right. And
both of those areas have to improve significantly, especially in these early games.
Right. Well, and that was something that was, I think, somebody asked Matt Rule at Media Days about defending against the run, which was one of our struggles last year. And Matt kind of said, it's not that so much as it is, defending in the red zone, right? And he put more of the focus on the red zone, saying that we need to, stop teams in the red zone. And then also on offense, we need to be able to score, because we did have, ability to get the ball moving at times. But then when the field was more constrained, we struggled because, we had a good running game, but it was all Emmett Johnson.
Right. He was making it out of air.
If a team could find a way to stop Emmett, we really had no second answer.
Right. Exactly.
Which became a problem.
And again, back to that whole wide receivers getting open, and then the offensive line not giving enough time. So those things all kind of played. I would disagree with Matt Rule's assessment a little bit. I would say, particularly on defense, the number of times that I felt like we let teams off the hook,
right,
where we would get them to third down anywhere on the field. It wasn't just about the red zone. Yeah. It was our third down defense was atrocious, in my opinion, last season, and I'm hopeful that was John Butler's fault,
right,
and maybe some youth from the team, and that our new coaching staff is going to be able to solve that puzzle quite a bit.
Right.
We've got to be able to consistently stop teams. The number of times that we had 3rd and 8 or even more, and we gave it up, made me pull what little hair I have left out.
Right. Yeah. When the quarterback would just scramble and somehow, weave his way through these gaps we'd left and get the first down.
Right.
Yeah. That happened a lot.
It did.
Yeah.
And so.
And then another area I know you and I are both going to be watching, and this is more on the coaching side of things, is overall game management and clock management by both Matt Rule as the head coach and on the coordinators, because we've been pretty critical of Matt in the past on some of his choices and key moments in terms of when to take timeouts or when to go for fourth downs, things of that nature. And there are ways that he can improve on that, right? Like go to a retired coach or somebody who's like an expert at that and say, hey, what would you do in this situation, or what's your guidelines or what have you. Since Matt is always talking about how he works hard and he expects the team to work hard and his staff to work hard. Well, Matt, what have you been doing to improve yourself as a coach in the off season?
Right.
And will we see some of that in the games this year?
Right. And that's so hugely important, because in this league, we coach against really good coaching staffs.
Right.
We just do. And you have to expect that. And when you expect it, and it's going to be there, you have to rise to that same level. And I feel like he has been below average in this particular area of coaching. And I only got to read a little bit of the article that you had sent me with regard to that subject, that one of the writers had written.
Right.
And his argument was maybe more that it was better early in the year and then it got worse later in the year. I would beg to differ. I thought that early in the year, even in games where we were the better team and should have dominated, we would make just enough stupid plays or stupid decisions that would lead to a team that we had on the verge of kind of closing them out. Like we were going to get a lead.
Get to 21 points.
Yeah, or 17 or whatever. And then we would stumble at a critical time and blow, a 4-minute or 2-minute drill type situations and not get points out of it. And then we got bailed out. You'll recall the Michigan game. The Michigan game on paper now from last year looks like, we did pretty well. We only lost by 3 or something like that.
Well, that was such a weird game.
It was a very weird game. We didn't score that many points, but neither did they, because they
self-destructed.
They self-destructed a little bit as well.
There was a lot of turnovers on both
and we
sides.
got a freebie basically at the end of the half. The last play of the first half, we scored a touchdown on a miraculous kind of situation. Had we not gotten that score, the game might have been very, very different in the second half.
Right.
I'm not giving him credit for that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And his staff's use of timeouts is an abomination and needs to be corrected.
Right.
And I understand it as a coach. It's easy for me to say,
right, after
as a
the
fan,
game, yeah.
well, or even just immediately after the circumstance, that you shouldn't have used the timeout there. Because the answer is I needed to use the timeout because otherwise we were going to get called for procedure or whatever at a critical moment, or we were going to let the clock run or whatever. There was things in his head that told him he needed to do that. You can't let yourself be in that situation. That's where coaching Monday through Friday comes in. Okay, Your players, your team needs to know. They don't need to be, I wonder what coach, they need to know what they're doing. And I feel like last year our team didn't know what they were doing.
Right. Which, to your point, on the defensive side of the ball, especially with the complexity of what John Butler was asking them to do, and maybe being out of system and us having to call a timeout just to fix that or whatever.
Right.
Hopefully that specific area maybe can be fixed with Rob Arick's new defense. But the problem goes far beyond that, to your point.
Yes, absolutely. Where personnel, the right personnel aren't there. I mean, there was, he brags on E.J. Butler or E.J. Bartell, the running backs coach, all the time. But there were some times when it was like, I can't believe the running back substitution pattern that he would do, especially early in the year. I mean, obviously once once Johnson got on a roll, it was pretty obvious what
Right.
you wanted
To do.
in there. But there were times when he would substitute and do some stuff, and I'm just scratching my head. I don't understand why you're doing that. You know, so
There we go.
we'll see.
All right. Well, Matt, you can come take the Peter Schmidt's timeouts course. It's free. Just special offer just for you.
Just for
So
him.
reach
That's
out to us at collegefootballthrowdown@gmail.com.
Exactly.
All right. We'll set you right.
Now, one other area I don't know is special teams.
Oh, yes.
It's going to be huge this year because
Right.
we made a good step forward,
Yes.
right? And we have some of our specialists have returned, but one in particular that I'm going to be watching during preseason camp and early season games, snapper,
Right.
long snapper. We lost that guy. In fact, that's the kid that we should be getting back. If we have a spot
Oh.
and can get a fifth year out of that guy, I think we should do it. Because anytime you have a transition in that role, as minor as it might be perceived, because he's only on the field a few plays a game, that's a huge, huge role.
Right.
Changes the complexion.
Need to be consistent.
Yep, and we had pretty good kicking and punting, snapping all season, and that has been a circus in previous years.
Right.
So
Right.
I
Well,
want that.
and of course, we lost our special teams coach.
Yeah.
The end of last year.
Super dynamic,
Right.
motivator.
Yeah, and he did a great job turning things around in just 1 year.
He did.
Now we have our two young coaches in, one of whom was our former player of ours.
Yep.
Who are kind of splitting up the duties there and kind of continuing from where he left off. They were assistants before, so
Right.
In the ideal world, they kind of pick up where he left off. A lot of the players are still the same, like you mentioned, and so things kind of stay at the high level that they were last year, and we don't notice a
Right.
dip.
Right.
But that's a big if.
Yeah. Well, because he was very demanding as a coach. He was
Right.
very vocal, and he made being on special teams fun. And
Right.
Because he was such a dynamic personality, people gravitated to it. Right.
Yeah.
Now the guys we have, I don't think match that. Right.
Right.
The coaches, I mean,
Right.
that we have now.
So to be specific, we have Brett Maher
Yep.
and Nick Humphrey currently.
Right.
Brett
Right.
Maher being a very good kicker for us.
Former NFL punter.
Right.
The guy was really good.
And Mike Eckler is the one they're replacing. So
Right.
Just to put the names out there
Right.
for everybody.
And he's Maher, from every interview I've ever seen, is a very quiet, steady guy, which is what made him good at his job.
Right.
And technically, I think he's good.
Right.
Right. So we should be okay. But he's now coaching players that come from the Australian football rules kind of rugby-ish environment, and that's a different set of skills. And
That's true.
how you advance and develop those skills, Maher doesn't know how to do that.
Right.
Where this has been a cornerstone of
Eckler.
Eckler's for years.
Right.
So I don't know how that goes.
Right.
I need to see results.
But I'm sure, because like you say, that Australian style of punting, has really kind of taken
Taken
over
off, yeah.
a lot of college
And
it's
pro.
and it's gone to the pros. So it's not like Maher's unfamiliar with it. I'm sure he,
Right.
learned about it, knows guys in the pros who were
Right.
great at it, etc.
But you're inheriting a guy that came from the quote quote best school for that sort of thing that exists in the world over there in Australia. How much can Maher teach that guy?
Right.
And hone that skill. And so I need to see the results before I'm
Well, and
feeling good about it.
And here's a genuine question for you, since you're saying that Brett is maybe more of the, quiet but insightful type of coach.
Yes.
Do you think that maybe that's why they paired him up with Nick Humphrey, where he's the more energetic guy?
I hope so. And Nick is a guy that had been an assistant to Eckler in his previous role, previous stop. And so he's been around the guy a while. And so you're hoping that he has inherited a little more of the overall, not just philosophy, but execution side of the special teams, right?
Right.
And I don't know him from Adam, so I can't tell you, how much of a dynamic personality that guy is and whether or not he's going to be able to do that. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is, as a special teams coordinator, you must be impeccably organized. And your guys, you've got to have them all on the same page mentally and just not willing to make a mistake. Right? You can't have the guy who comes off the field who's also on, punt team and forgets that he's on punt team, or he goes to get a drink of water, and then he realizes, oh gosh, we're punting. No, unacceptable. Can't be. Can never, ever, ever, ever happen. Okay? And when you have a guy like Eckler, if you did that once, even during practice, he's probably, what's the old phrase about ripping your head off and puking down your throat? I mean,
chewing you out.
Yeah, he's gonna do that, and then you'll never do it again. You will never, ever, ever do it again. That's what you need. You need a guy who's willing to, rattle the cage of everybody that's on that special teams unit to understand how important it is. Now, Tom Osborne achieved that for 25 years without being the screamer, right? And his special teams coaches weren't screamers either. But we were remarkably consistent and at the top of college football for 25 years.
Right.
It was amazing. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. We were like kicker you.
Yeah.
And so I struggle because my experience as a young person following Nebraska, that was just a given.
Yeah, I didn't even have to talk about it in the off season.
No.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we always love giving the proper time of day to kicking game, as Tom Osborne would call it, not special teams.
Not special teams.
Because it is very important.
1/3 of the game.
That's right. So we'll be watching all those areas of the team here, of course, as fall camp continues and as we get closer to that kickoff game for the season. We've also got things going on in the world of Nebraska volleyball, of course, and on that future podcast, we'll talk a little bit more about the team. They have a red-white scrimmage coming up here next Sunday, so that'll be nice to get an insight on the new girls on the team and things like that.
Well, and a lot of the starters are back. We know we have a bunch of depth, but we lost 2 starters, and seeing who's going to step into those roles and how they perform is going to be important. And it's going to be a fascinating year for the volleyball team, because I don't want to go into it right now. We're going to do this on another podcast, but I have some pretty strong opinions of what I think Danny Busboom Kelly's going to do, and some of them are going to probably rattle Nebraska fan cages and national cages, frankly, because she's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because of so much talent.
Right.
I mean, it's a weird situation that she finds herself in, and especially with the 5-for-5. The 5-for-5 is going to have a huge impact on Nebraska's volleyball team this year and obviously next year, depending on how that plays out.
Definitely. So, you'll get to hear Dad's secret opinions on our next podcast.
Your mother and I are going to see them play the game at Wrigley Field in Chicago, and we're going to be watching the Ohio game, and probably from Wrigleyville, along with some good friends of ours who are Illinois fans, and they play on FS1 right after us. So ours is the first game of the day on that Saturday, and then Illinois plays right after that, and we're going to be in Chicago. So it should be an absolutely fabulous weekend, and hopefully get some more insight into the volleyball team. Not so much from that Wrigley game, because it's outside and God knows what the wind is going to be, and it could be a disaster from an execution standpoint. But they also play at DePaul on Friday, so we'll be able to see them in a gym in a regular environment first.
Okay, very cool. So we hope you out there enjoyed listening to this podcast. You can email us at collegefootballthrowdown@gmail.com. You can also reach out to us and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or on YouTube. We always love hearing back feedback from fans with ratings and reviews and comments and all that good stuff. So thank you out there for listening, and thank you, Dad, for joining me for this episode. It's been fun. Until next time, go Big Red!
Go Big Red!